Welcome everybody to the Till Death Stop Me podcast, because the inevitable is one day we are going to die. Sounds pretty morbid, right? But you want to know what I think is even more depressing? Merely existing on this planet and not achieving, not going, not experiencing, not meeting, not having every single thing that I've ever wanted in this life. We have one shot to do this thing right. So we might as well experience every single thing we've ever wanted, have every single thing that we've ever wanted, build communities with long-lasting, meaningful relationships. Most importantly, achieve our ideal version of what success looks like to us. So that is why in this podcast, we're gonna be interviewing people that, even against all the odds, have been able to do that and are working constantly every single day to build their ideal lifestyle. So without further ado, thank you for tuning in, guys. Let's get into this episode.
Is learning how to add value in those search results instead of just copying everything else that's there. I'd say that's the biggest mistake that I see people doing.
I want to welcome a very well-known face to the TDSM podcast today. We have Cassiy Johnson. She is a multiple six-figure Etsy print-on-demand seller. She's been selling on Etsy for a little over 3 years now, and in only one short year, she has managed to help over 300 students get their first 100 sales, to even their 5-figure a month mark, to even 6 figures per month. Cassiy is actually one of the most impressive entrepreneurs, lady entrepreneurs, might I add, that I know. At the early age of 16, she actually was pregnant, having her first child, and having to basically fend for herself as far as, building a career for herself, as well as later down the road, losing her job due to COVID. Instead of panicking and shutting down, she goes out and manages to somehow build a wildly successful e-commerce business. And so that's why in today's episode, we are gonna unpack how, against all odds set against her, she has managed to build this ideal, basically dream lifestyle where she has gained not only financial, but also location and time freedom. And now obviously sharing that back with her students. And if you stay until the end, Cassiy is going to share her very, very top secret sauce tip on how you can stand out today in the print-on-demand space, even in the most saturated niches. So without further ado, welcome Cassiy Johnson. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Hannah. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be on the show and listen to all the next episodes.
Yeah, you're my very first guest, so you're a special honor.
Yeah, I'm so excited that you're getting started with this. I think it's going to be an awesome podcast, and I feel honored to be the first one.
Sweet. Well, let's just get right into the nitty-gritty. As we know, the point of this whole entire podcast, this whole entire series, is really like identifying people that we think are super inspiring. Obviously, you're super inspiring and have a super interesting and very, very motivating story for anybody that's starting to get into this game. So let's just dive into the nitty-gritty. So when you were at the age of 16 and you realized that you are having a baby, what did that make you automatically assume that the rest of your life was going to look like as far as your career goes?
Honestly, at that point in my life, when I'm sitting there, I'm 15 years old, found out that I'm pregnant, I had no clue where the rest of my life was going to go. I wasn't, the kind of teenager who was like, oh, I'm going to go to college and do this. I was, obviously more preoccupied with other things at the time and just focusing more on my friends and my life than I was with school or what I wanted to do. And so at that point, I felt really, really, really lost. I had no clue what the rest of my life was going to look like, but I knew going to college probably wasn't going to be one of the options anymore, since, I wanted to keep my baby and be a mom. And so, I just was super, super, super lost.
So fast forward, years later, you're doing like, pretty entry-level jobs. Do you end up into the corporate world somehow? You managed to get into the corporate world later down the road?
In the corporate world eventually. So kind of just like a quick history of my work life. I got a job as a waitress at IHOP. I worked at a movie theater. I worked at a roller rink. I worked at Kentucky Fried Chicken, a couple different places. Then I got a job at a bar. This was all between 16 and 19. And then somebody came into the actual restaurant that I was working in and was like, hey, you would be great at sales. You should come work at this furniture store. So then I went and sold furniture for about 8 years in a retail environment. And that's where I think I built up a lot of the grit that I have now. I ended up being the top salesperson in my store for a few years before I left. And I left that job for a corporate sales position because I was sick of the, 9 p.m. every night, retail hours. And so I tried to go to a corporate position to be able to work 9 to 5 and still do sales. There was very limited career opportunities there for someone who didn't have a degree. It was kind of, I got that job, but that was going to be the end of the road. I couldn't really move forward anywhere. And so I was trying to find something else to do with myself. But before I really figured anything out, that's when the pandemic hit and I got laid off from that corporate job.
Yeah. And we're going to dive into that part of the story in a second. But I just wanted to back up for 1 second, because do you think it was just, a lot of people go into any job, whether it's corporate or an entry-level job, but do you just think it was like in your innate nature to be a well-performing employee? Because I feel like nowadays it's very hard to find good help. And when you do, usually the people like yourself that are really, really good at just doing their job tend to, be CEOs one day. But at that time where you didn't even have, CEO or business owner like in your, in your mirror or whatever, or out your front window, what was inside of you that was like, okay, like I want to perform at a high level in comparison to everyone else, like in my work environment? Like, what was that in you to like just do a good job?
I think just like a lot of people, you eventually find your why. Like, what is it that pushes you along? And for me, I had some stuff going on at home when I was about 17. And so I decided to move out. So I moved out at 17, got my own place, and lived very paycheck to paycheck for quite a long time before I kind of figured out my finances. And, I was a single mom for pretty much my little one's whole life until I got married in 2021. And so it was just me. If I didn't make it work, if I didn't make money, if I didn't do well, then we didn't have what we needed. And so I think it probably was born from a place of necessity. You can't just skate by when you're not leaning on anybody else. And so for the majority of my adult life, I didn't have someone else to like take care of me. It was like, okay, it's me and you, that's it. And so I think that's where part of it comes from. The other, I know you and I have talked quite a lot about, is my parents, when I was growing up, were in a lot of the multi-level marketing businesses, which never really quite all the way worked out for them. They made some money, but I think the biggest benefit I got from them being in those was reading a ton of books growing up, like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, The Magic of Thinking Big. There was a ton of different books that I read growing up that I think later on really started to sink in, and I at least had an idea of those concepts to, do better with my life so I could have more. It's probably where it started. And then I just continued that lifelong learning and reading more books. And I do really attribute a lot of my success to the mindset I got from the books that I've read.
Yeah, and that's I know we talk about that all the time. We both had our MLM parents, but and you touched on something else with your internal why. So for you, it was very much, I need to survive. I have another life I'm taking care of. Nobody is coming to save me. Like, I got to do this thing. So that's a very, very strong internal why. And I talk about internal whys all the time. Like, why are we doing this? Why are we working harder than everyone else? Why are there's got to be some motivating factor there. So for somebody that maybe doesn't have as strong of a why factor or an internal why, what would you, but literally hate their job, hate what they're doing, how would you help them formulate their internal why? And money can't just be the answer. It can't just be, oh, more money.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question, how to motivate someone who doesn't have as big of a why. Because I think I've heard a quote, I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's that comfort is the enemy of success. Because when you're comfortable, you're happy where you are, there's no need to move, like maybe you don't love your coworkers, maybe you don't love your job, but it's easy, you can kind of skate by and just zone out of your own life. And I remember when I was working full time, it felt like months would fly by in a week because I'd work all day, I'd get home, I was tired, I didn't feel motivated to do anything, I wasn't taking care of myself or always keeping up on the cleaning, I just zoned out, watched TV, and life just kind of skates on by. And I don't know if it's, like the YOLO kind of mentality, but I think people need to realize that you need to wake up and live your own life in whatever way that means. I think reading a book like The Magic of Thinking Big is a really, really good one, or The 4-Hour Work Week, just to start inspiring yourself a little bit every day that more is possible. You don't have to just be comfortable. You can be really, really, really happy. It doesn't have to mean millions of dollars. That can mean you just have more time to spend with family and loved ones. So I think really if I was someone who just felt really complacent and comfortable but didn't really feel motivated, that's probably something I would implement into my daily life, is reading something motivational or learning something new every day. And I think the inspiration will follow.
Wow, that's awesome. It's good advice. Okay, so moving fast forward, right? It's not just, early motherhood, right? We have another big significant event that goes on in your life, right? So, we're in a corporate, comfortable job. You love it or you're okay with it?
No, corporate life was absolutely not for me. There was a lot of corporate politics. So I was looking to find something new while I worked there.
So and then we get another triggering factor, which is COVID, right? And you lost the job because of COVID, correct?
Yep, I worked at a company that owned 1,000 daycares. And so daycares all closed and they had to lay off over 1,000 people.
And at that point, we see this shift. And that looks like what happening internally and externally. What are you doing every day? What is the thought process every day that now carries you on to, okay, we're going to open a business, and now this business is a crazy success?
Well, I kind of started off a lot smaller than that. It turned into something different over time. But in the beginning, I had always wanted to have my own business of some kind. I'd always imagined that would be a handmade business on Etsy or something. So I tried lots of different projects, like dipping mugs in nail polish to do cool patterns on them, or making candle holders out of concrete, or I did all these different things, and none of them really seemed sustainable enough to be able to do that. And so then once I finally had some time on my hands during the pandemic and I was home, the first 6 weeks of it, I thought I was just furloughed. I didn't know I was laid off just yet. And so the journey really was, well, if I ever was going to start something, I've got a little extra time now. So I started watching a bunch of YouTube videos just to see if I could find a side hustle. That was really what I was looking for. Just something I could do on the side, make a little extra money, have a little creative outlook, a little creative outlet. And that's when I found print on demand on Etsy. And that seemed like the perfect fit because I didn't have to try and keep up with the production. I could just make the designs, which was the fun part that I wanted to do. And then I didn't want to have to actually print the items or ship the items myself. So it seemed like a really perfect fit. I didn't go into it thinking, I'm going to be a millionaire if I do this. I just went into it thinking, well, if this random guy on the internet can do it, then so can I. And I started the very next day, and the rest is kind of history.
And I know a lot of people at this point know what print on demand is, but can you give go a little bit deeper on the actual model itself? What is the print on demand specifically on Etsy?
Absolutely. So print on demand is a process where you work with a print production company. So in my case, I use a company called Printify. They've got hundreds of different products on their website, like pillows, shirts, sweatshirts, tote bags, mugs, anything really you can imagine, they will make for you. So you go and actually make a design on your phone or on the computer, and then you upload that design onto their website and publish it to Etsy. So it looks like it's already made. It has digital photos of the product printed with your design on it, but it doesn't actually get created until someone orders it. So that's where the on-demand piece comes in. So your customer orders the item that you put up for sale in your store. The print company gets that order, prints it, and sends it to your customer, and even updates the tracking number for you. And so really your only responsibilities are making the designs and uploading them, and then handling the customer service that might come with it. But the print company handles everything else, which is so great.
And you basically started your shop, and I think there was one more hiccup that we forgot to mention, that you opened your store and then all of a sudden they basically shut it down. Is that correct?
Yeah, Etsy has a lot of different systems and processes in place to keep scammers and bots from opening accounts on their platform. So quite a few new sellers get stuck in this system on accident and their accounts get suspended. And mine was no different. Mine got suspended as well. And so my shop was closed for about a month after I opened it. I had it open, I think, 2 days before it got suspended. And then I eventually got it back after filing an appeal with Etsy and complaining to the Better Business Bureau because they were really slow to get back to people. Usually it takes 1 to 2 weeks nowadays to get your account back. And in that time, I tried to have a Shopify store, and that kind of crashed and burned. I got 5 sales from friends from Facebook, and that was it. My ads, I just spent a bunch of money and didn't actually make any sales.
So it's just hurdle after hurdle, but then finally a month goes by, we get the account back, and you're now, like in that first year, already well over, I believe, at the 6 figures mark, but clearing quite a bit of profit, I believe, from knowing you, talking to you, and seeing your videos. And now you've transitioned from basically, still doing it for yourself, crazy successful still, but now teaching people and seeing some pretty insane results on behalf of your students. So just talk a little bit more of that journey and working with students. And I guess you could answer, like, what is like one of the biggest objections somebody has coming into the space, and how you help them overcome that objection or that mental block of basically their path to success. That was a lot in one question, but
No, it's great. So just to kind of like answer the first part of the question. So, I got started on Etsy. I had one design take off and got, 40 sales my first month. I think I got 100 sales my next month. It was a really slow buildup. I think it was it was August of 2020. So I started in May of 2020 and made just a couple $100 a month until August, when I went back to work full time at a new job. That was the first month I actually made $4,000 in profit after all expenses and everything. And I had just gone back to work, starting working 40 hours a week again. And so I was like, oh my gosh, this is so crazy. So I started, putting as much of my time on the side into it as I could, and ended up selling $70,000 in the month of November, and I think $30,000 in the month of December. So 2020, from May to December, my first 8 months, I sold $134,000, which was about $40K profit.
wow.
Just working on that, obviously kind of full-time the first few months, but then part-time as I was working my full-time job the next few. And then the next year, I ended up selling $350,000 in revenue, and I quit my job in June of 2021. So I quit my job halfway through that year, and that was a really crazy year to really get to take it full time, take it super seriously. And I, made a lot of mistakes, learned a lot of lessons, and built a lot of processes in place for myself to make it more efficient and get success faster. And so then comes 2022, I decided to start a YouTube channel because I'd already helped about 20 people I knew how to start and scale their Etsy businesses. Just about every person that's related to me has an Etsy shop or had one in the past. I have lots of different people in my family that have done that. And so I was sending everyone this like really crappy email of like the instructions on how to do it, or I would get on Zoom calls with people I knew. And I was like, well, if there just was, more YouTube videos, like I could just create those. So it kind of started, again, just like Etsy is like a small project. I was like, if I could just have, like a couple thousand subscribers by the end of 2021, that would be amazing. I just want to like help people with a few more in-depth tutorials that I wasn't really finding on YouTube. And so starting that journey, it ended up going super, super well. And then now in June of 2023, I have over 80,000 subscribers, which is amazing. I've helped hundreds and hundreds of students start and scale their Etsy shops. I think the amount of people that have taken my free course is like 13,000 people. The amount of people that have purchased my actual big course, where I teach a lot more in depth of the exact processes that I do, is about 200 people at this point have taken that course. And some of those students have, like you said, gone on to get their first sales, their first 100 sales, their first 1,000. And some have even scaled to having 5-figure and even 6-figure months on Etsy after duplicating what I've learned in my journey. So that's to all answer kind of the beginning of your question, but to answer kind of the second part, I know kind of long-winded, but it's all super exciting. I think the biggest thing that I have to help people with is understanding and treating Etsy like the business that it is. Because I went into it thinking, I'm just going to try this and like see what happens. If it doesn't work out, I'll give up. And I think a lot of people go into that and maybe don't accidentally stumble on success like I did in the beginning. I just happened to have a design take off right in the beginning and I got those 40 sales. Some people, it takes a lot longer to see that success. And so helping people understand how to do the research before starting is, I think, the biggest thing that I focus on and teach in my course that has helped people really find success.
Wow, that's really, really big. Also, yeah, because the print on demand model is very much like, you have a very natural design eye. And so, you going to market with those initial designs worked really well. But, for somebody that maybe doesn't have that design eye, like intuitively, right? Like that's then becomes like a new skill. So that's really cool that you discovered that and realized that that's probably one of the biggest pain points that new POD sellers are overcoming. So that's really awesome that, that's what you're helping with. So out of everything that you're seeing with the POD space right now, essentially, what are you seeing, or what are the biggest key attributes in a POD model today in 2023 that, these newer sellers really need to adopt in order to be able to be competitive and, win in their niches?
Absolutely. I think the advice that I saw when I started 3 years ago was to find a best seller on Etsy, recreate it, and post it for sale. And that was just the only recipe to success. And I think there's still something to that, right? You want to research what people are already shopping for and already buying on Etsy and create things for those customers. That piece is still right. But if you create a design that looks just a little bit different than the best seller does, and you don't have any sales, you don't have any reviews, why would they buy from you? You're never going to replace that bestseller with a carbon copy of it. And so that's something that took me a while to learn. And that's something that I really teach, is learning how to add value in those search results instead of just copying everything else that's there. I'd say that's the biggest mistake that I see people doing.
Well, Cassiy, I have to say this is super inspiring. I know that we have left our very last secret sauce tip. So what is your number one Etsy selling print on demand tip for us today?
Absolutely. So that last question kind of led right into it. So again, like I said, to be successful on Etsy, you really need to learn how to add value. And so I wanted to leave you with one last tip of maybe a more actionable tip than just a general add value. What does that even mean? And tell you that some great ways to add value is take a look at what the search results for your niche has already and see what it may be missing. Are there any couples matching shirts in those search results? Are there any designs that you could put together in a group shirt for a couple friends to wear? Or could you turn it into bachelorette matching shirts? Could you cross niche it with another popular subject like plants or moms, and kind of adding value? So that way, when the person sees it, they're like, oh my gosh, this was made specifically for me. This is perfect. And if you do that in the right way, you see what there already is, see where you can add value, and then you do that, that's where the real success comes from.
Wow, that's a $1 million formula right there. So thank you. Thank you for revealing that on my podcast. All right. And to finish out this episode, Cassiy, what is the number one thing that you are never going to stop striving for while you exist on this planet until death stops you?
So like I said before, that is never-ending self-improvement. I'm never going to stop learning and improving and lifting up other people in my life, because those are absolutely all my passions. I could read books and listen to podcasts and watch YouTube videos till midnight every single day of my life and probably never feel completely satisfied. I'm just obsessed. So it's definitely that.
Wow, beautiful. Growth mindset, people. It's the key. It is the key. Well, Cassiy, where can we find you? We have your YouTube channel and we have your website. We'll make sure we put those links in the description. Anywhere else? Or that was basically it, right?
Yep, that's it. CassiyJohnson.com or Cassiy Johnson on YouTube. Nice and easy. If you just remember my name, you can find me anywhere and give me a follow there, or check out my free course or my paid course or some of my other things that I offer right on my website. It's all on there.
Perfect. Yeah, guys, if you are going to try to get into print on demand today, you might as well learn from the people that are at the top. So Cassiy is definitely the one to follow. All those links you just described, we'll make sure we have that at the bottom of this video so you can go and check her out. But overall, thank you guys for watching. And Cassiy, thank you for being my first guest.
Yes, thank you for having me, Hannah. It was good talking with you.
Alrighty, see you soon.
See you.